Welcome to Paris on Politics, where we always take you behind the headlines and beyond the spin. Taxes, transit, bears, oh my. The deadline to get legislation and a balanced budget passed is now 2 days away, and our state's lawmakers are burning the midnight oil, hoping to fit it all in. So let's start with what we know about two transit proposals, one in the House, one in the Senate. It would call for a brand new agency to oversee all of the CTA, Metra, and PACE, called the Northern Illinois Transit Agency. Both proposals would provide a universal fare card to use between all of those agencies. And the Senate proposal would provide hundreds of millions of dollars in new state funding through a tax on rideshare and a 50-cent tax on Illinois tollway users, among many other things. And joining us to break all of this down, our State Representative Cam Buckner, a Democrat from Chicago, State Representative C.D. Davidsmeyer, a Republican from downstate Murraysville, State Senator Ram Vilivalam, a Democrat from Chicago, and State Senator Don DeWitte, a Republican from St. Charles. Great cross-section of our region and our state here. So, Representative Cam Buckner, I'll start with you. How will this transit proposal change my experience riding the CTA, PACE, and Metra?
Well, listen, what this is, Paris, is the biggest overhaul of regional transit in 40 years. And what the intent is to streamline many processes that exist within CTA, Metra, and PACE to make the regional authority, which will now be called NETA, a much stronger authority that has the ability to coordinate projects and to make sure that everything from fares to schedules are aligned. But the most important thing is that it gives us the tools to create a cleaner, safer, more accessible ride for those people who use the system and for the people who operate it.
All right, Representative C.D. Davidsmeyer, is someone voting from downstate. This doesn't necessarily impact your region. What do you think about this bill?
Yeah, this absolutely impacts my region. I have a lot of friends that go up to the city and like to visit. The reality is we've got a system that I agree does need to be changed around. The leadership of it needs to be switched around and the way they run it. We're dealing with the largest budget in state history, and we're being asked to give another $1.5 billion to help bail out this system where ridership is down and crime is up. So we have to see real change in order to even talk about the type of spending that we're really talking about today.
And Senator Vilivalam, you also unveiled a proposal just in the last few hours in the Senate that does similar things, but also has some new revenue. Tell us about where that revenue is going to come from and how much we're talking about.
Thank you for having us. So as you noted, we had a subject matter hearing on legislation in the Senate Transportation Committee today. I'll describe it like a business leader described it to me. We consider it a shared sacrifice funding package regarding efficiencies, existing funding streams, and of course a few additional ones that we believe will really get us to the number that we need to see a world-class public transit system, not for next year, but for decades to come. But we've always said from the beginning, no funding without reform. As has been noted by Rep. Buckner, we put the reforms forward. We're going to make sure we have an accountable system, and don't take my word for it. This morning, the Civic Committee of the Commercial Club and the Civic Federation both put out a statement in support of the proposal and the work that we've done, both on reform and funding.
And those are two influential organizations. But just so I have this clear, Senator Vilivalam, are we talking about a 50-cent extra tollway charge and then a 10% tax on rideshare?
We're talking about the regional entity, NETA, will have the ability, giving them local control to enact a transaction fee on tolls. Obviously, as you may know, we're one of the lowest toll rates in the nation. So they'll have that ability. And yes, there'd be a rideshare fee that obviously in the city of Chicago it exists, and we're extending it throughout the entire region, again, under this mantra of shared sacrifice.
All right, Senator DeWitte, you represent the suburbs out there, so mostly served by PACE and Metra. Do you think suburban representatives are going to have a problem with some of these funding mechanisms and some of these reforms?
Well, I think we probably will, Paris, and thanks for having me tonight. The suburbs are very concerned about the percentage of these proposed tax revenue increases are going to affect them. It appears that the majority of them are going to impact suburban homeowners and suburban residents the hardest. The excise or the surcharge that will be established on the tollway system Look, there are 0 toll booths in the city of Chicago. Most of the tolls paid are paid by suburban riders, either traveling in and out of the city or traveling across the city in and out of state between Wisconsin and Indiana. So we're very concerned about that number. A retail tax, a real estate exchange tax that's being proposed, that already exists in Cook County, is now being proposed for the 5 suburban collar counties. That is a tax increase on residents who live out in the collar counties. Again, another example of a burden that is being placed directly on the shoulders of suburban taxpayers. The collar counties have no interest in funding Mayor Johnson or the city of Chicago to rescue the CTA from the dismal management that they have been experiencing over the last 10 to 12 years. And just yesterday, the state's inspector general cited the CTA for nearly $1.2 million in ghost payrolling for people of all departments who count the money that comes in to the CTA. I'm not sure my suburban constituents or any of the suburban county board members or chairmen are interested in handing this much money over to a system that is so poorly managed in the city of Chicago.
All right, Representative Buckner, back to you. You do represent part of the city of Chicago. Where does that leave these various proposals then if some suburban representatives might have some issues?
Well, listen, we know that we have to get buy-in from representatives and senators from around the state, and that's what we're doing. What Senator Balabalam is doing on his side of the Capitol, and what Representative Evelina Delgado and I am doing on this side is having the conversations to figure out how we get there. I want to be very clear. Whether you live in the neighborhood I grew up in, Morgan Park, or in Morgan County, like my friend Representative Davis Meyer, this is important for the entire state of Illinois. Whether we're talking about freight or higher ed or startup or tech or healthcare, if Chicago and the Northeast region has a functioning system, it's better for the entire economy of the state. And if we do this the right way, if we have the conversations and figure out how to move forward, this is not a bailout, it's a bridge. A bailout doubles down on status quo. We're doing the exact opposite here, and I hope we can get there together.
Representative Davis Meyer, if you don't like elements of this plan, you have acknowledged that there needs to be an overhaul and the importance of this region's transit system. What would be some better ideas?
Yeah, you know, I think that the Senate has taken a different approach to the House, the Senate, and I want to thank the senator for bringing in the other side to have legitimate conversations between Republicans and Democrats. Unfortunately, on the House side, we have not had those conversations. It's a very one-sided, let's move ahead on our own. Certainly, everybody in the state of Illinois seems to be on the hook for this, whether they like it or not. This is going to come out of the state's coffers if it happens. So we have to make sure that everybody is on board and there's a true benefit. I mean, this overall has to be major. We have to be talking safety. Crime is a major issue, and the individual riders have to feel safe, but they also have to be paying for the service as well.
Senator Villavalem, would that mean then maybe fare hikes do have to be a part of the equation here to offset revenue if you don't get votes on all the revenue that you want?
My personal belief is no. And I want to back up and say, look, we're not the only public transit system that's facing this issue. Every major public transit system in the nation is facing this fiscal cliff. That was really due to the decline in ridership that was expedited by the COVID-19 pandemic. And so what we've done through this entire process is engage the Chicago Metropolitan Agency on Planning, have them convene stakeholders, commission a report. We've had 2 bills introduced. We've had 8 Senate Transportation Committee hearings with over 35 hours of testimony. The funding mechanisms in this legislation, the reforms supported by several groups, that's all been informed by these hearings, by the report, and that's what has gotten us here today. And I also want to note that there is downstate transit components to our legislation. There's 54 downstate transit agencies that serve 95 different counties. We're working to ensure that they have the ability to be more integrated, coordinated, and that they get the funding they need, because we want to make sure where this has always been a statewide priority. And so I'm committed to, again, getting this done by May 31st, because the alternative is 40% cuts to service people with disabilities will have to experience anxiety about whether they're able to go to their doctor. And over 3,000 workers that work in public transit will get pink slips over the summer and into the fall. That's not acceptable.
All right, Senator DeWitte, do you believe, that's 2 days away, do you believe that the General Assembly can pass something, whatever this final package looks like, to stave off the doomsday scenario?
Yeah. I'm not sure we're going to get it done or not this week, Paris. You know, there's a big difference between reform and what appears to us to be takeover. And I'll give you an example. One of the proposals in the current structure would be to give the governor of the state of Illinois 5 appointments on the new NETA board.
And again, this
hidden
is a
in the
Northern
bill
Illinois
is a line
Transit
item that would
Agency.
specifically suggest that the chairman of the new NETA board will be one of the picks of the governor. Between the governor's office, Cook County, the city of Chicago, unfortunately, the 5 collar counties are going to be left out of this process. We may have representation that's equal to the rest of the organizations, but we will not have equity in voting, and that really is the hang-up for the collar counties. Look, there are many parts of this process. Chairman Villabaum and I have been through this process for a year and a half. There's probably more we still agree on than there are issues that we're opposed to. We're willing to come to the table and still continue to talk about this process, but we have to separate the 2 issues of governance on one hand and revenue on the other. We can make the governance work. We have made proposals to our friends across the aisle that we can make it work. But the revenue issue is another problem. Again, we don't believe the suburbs should be carrying the weight on their shoulders of increasing enough revenue to support the entire system, and particularly the CTA in Chicago.
All right, it's going to be fascinating to see how the math falls down on this with the votes, city representatives, suburban representatives.